In this episode of Fifth Gear, we look at the secret world of armoured cars, go off-roading in Iceland, and test drive the new Aston Martin DB7 GT.
Tonight on Fifth Gear, it's ready, aim, fire. We're lifting the lid on the secret world of armoured cars, the must-have accessory for everyone from the Blairs to the Beckhams via Madonna.
With unprecedented access to the world's leading top-secret test lab, we'll meet the man who's one step ahead of the terrorists. Show you the difference 100 grand's worth of armour makes, and then, as an unmissable finale, demonstrate our own special brand of defensive driving. Imagine you're a world leader, a diplomat, a captain of industry, or a footballer with a hairdo. The flip side to fame and fortune is the fact that you're a target. Your house is surrounded by barbed wire and bodyguards, so the obvious time to attack is when you're out and about. If you drive an ordinary car, you don't stand a chance, as we'll demonstrate.
Our high-velocity rifle and powerful revolver made mincemeat of the Merc. It's frightening to think, if you know where to look, both weapons are readily available on the streets.
We've all seen a million cops in the movies hide behind the door in a firefight. But in reality, if a bullet hits at the lethal angle of 90 degrees, it'll tear through it like tissue paper.
Forget about the obvious Achilles heels like the tyres and the windows. If you're a car like this, you're a sitting duck.
And don't forget, Tiff, all those nooks and crannies where you can hide bombs. Is that you?
No, it's not me.
Just 1 kilo of plastic explosive vaporised our ambassador's S-Class. It's shocking imagery you may find uncomfortable, but it's the reality of modern attacks. Astonishingly, however, it is possible to build a car that can help withstand these types of assault.
Some manufacturers will build you an armoured car on their own production line. Mercedes-Benz have been doing it since 1930, when they built a car for Emperor Hirohito of Japan. These days, they line their S-Guard, E-Guard or tank-like G-Guard with high-strength steel combined with plastics. The steel stops the bullets, the plastic stops splinters entering the cabin. It all gets checked at the factory's dedicated assault testing facility.
Audi have the A6 and A8 security. Now, they don't actually advertise the fact that these cars are for sale, because they say if you're the kind of person who needs one, you'll find them.
BMW have their £200,000 7 Series protection, which can withstand armoured-piercing bullets.
It also has neat options like an emergency windscreen release system and bomb-proof flooring. Even massive detonations cause just minor denting. With the passenger compartment left completely intact.
But if you're fairly sure the people trying to kill you only have access to handguns, a 3 Series protection should suffice. It'll take a hit from Dirty Harry's 44 Magnum and only cost you an extra 20 grand. The beauty of all these cars is that they look totally normal and let you blend right in. Threats take many forms, but you can order a defence for all of them.
Like the Tampa Detect system. Now, most booby traps consist of little more than a lunchbox full of Semtex and a tilt switch attached to the underside of the car with a magnet from a hi-fi speaker. But a few trusty probes will detect that the magnetic field around the car has been disturbed and let you know as much before you drive off.
Then there are concealed gun ports to slot your gun into. Now, these are very handy if you want to hit the assassin before he hits you. In fact, he won't know who shot him until he sees the hole in your door and then the hole in his leg.
If you're worried about a bomb being wired into your ignition circuit, then let's face it, who isn't? You should opt for the remote starting facility. It allows you to fire up the engine from a safe and sound 100 metres away. All right, ready, everyone? 3, 2, 1... If that's whetted your appetite, then join us when we meet the man who puts bulletproof cars to the ultimate test. Plus the no-holds-barred way to drive out of danger.
Hello and welcome to Iceland, where the 4x4s play free!
Now in Britain, off-road entertainment usually involves fields, random sheep and mud. But in Iceland they drive up glaciers for fun. In 4x4s that are so highly modified you can run over your arm with impunity. Now that's trick suspension.
And I'm still alive!
I joined a group of Icelanders tackling the most extreme expedition drive the country has to offer. A trip up Europe's largest glacier, the Vatnajökull. We took the long way round to get there, a 250-mile trip on Iceland's only coastal highway. It was an expedition in itself. You run into sandstorms that can strip paint off a car in minutes, and then round the next corner you're plunged into minus 10 degrees and snow. The expedition organiser was a proper Icelander, with a proper Icelandic name and Muppets accent, Magnus Ragnarsson.
It's great because when you travel here, you can just turn a corner and you're in a different country almost. You have a new setting of lava or a green valley. It's just the textures are great.
Now you may have noticed that these aren't standard 4x4s. The stock item would be no good at all on a Glacier. So these have at least 12 grand's worth of jacked up suspension and huge low pressure tyres. All that means that these 3-tonners can literally float on snow. Trouble is, progress on the road is slow and bumpy because they can't make these massive tyres perfectly circular. And it didn't improve much when we started to climb into the mountains.
We've come off tarmac onto wobbly gravel roads. Well, the tyres have gone down to 10 psi. It's like driving on jelly, because the tyres are so huge anyway. We are actually heading out into the fairly serious bits. There's virtually no steering feel, and you're driving up a cliff about to get onto a glacier, where they'll drop them down even further. It's quite weird, to say the least, if you're used to driving road cars. Okay, so we've come along the blue bit, which is the sea, along the beach, up through the brown bit, which is a bit of the interior, and now we're on the base of the glacier, which is the white bit, hence my rather fashionable baby grow. And we're about to head up to the top, so I'll best go and get ready.
With tyres down to their 3 psi minimum pressure and the temperature down to minus 27, we set off to make the 8-hour trek from the base of the glacier to the active volcano that marks its highest point. Like Scott of the Antarctic, only fatter and less clever.
It's like driving over a piece of paper. You just can't see anything.
All the Toyota Land Cruisers we were driving were different, but the star of the show was this baby, the Polak, a car that's been to both the North and the South Poles. How cool is that?
The Polak has got a giant fire on the front. What it does, it just drops it down. So when he was going across the poles, if you drove into a crevasse, it gets stuck on the other side. So the crevasse is like that. Puts this bit of metal on, drives into the crevasse and just gets stuck so you can pull it out again. That's Icelandic technology.
See, the theory of snow driving is just to keep going. That way you float on the hard layer that's at the top of the snow. If you get stuck, you have to roll back till you find hard snow or get dug out. And when you're going, it's gravity-defying stuff, but it is very slow. And even slower because you do get stuck rather often, like every 10 feet. In all that white, you can't tell whether you're moving forwards or backwards. It's like travel sickness, but without the promise of relief if you stop. And then the weather got worse, Icelandic hardcore style, and we started getting tyre problems.
Alright, we've been going down the glacier, and our tyres, which are running really low PSI, have come off the rim and wrapped itself around the axle. Now we're trying to fix it, but we're in the middle of a blizzard. We can't see anything at all, and I just don't think we're going to make it to where we're going. It's a bit of a disappointment, but my God, this is harsh.
The tyres back on, but even Icelandic determination was no match for the worsening weather. This was a whiteout with attitude, and much scarier than it looks. We were still miles from the top of the glacier, and there was another problem to contend with. We were running out of diesel in a couple of the trucks. After 13 hours of battling, we reluctantly decided to turn back. The mighty Vatnajökull had defeated us. The Icelanders were devastated. I was, well, rather relieved.
I'm knackered. Everybody's shattered.
I'm not sure about this adventure lot. Doesn't seem to be much fun.
But going down wasn't as bad as going up. We followed our own tracks and it only took a couple of hours to get back off the glacier. Next day, we found a smaller glacier with the right kind of weather and the right kind of snow.
Gas, 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 gas.
It was big fun. We may have been thwarted in our attempts to climb Vatnajökull, but I'll be back.
We're investigating the world of bulletproof cars, and our trail has brought us deep underground to a secret test laboratory in northern France. Weeks of tense negotiating have gained us access to the place every baddie in the world would love to come. The world's leading car armourer.
It's here that our bulletician works to keep the Range Rover defences one step ahead of the terrorists' attacks by making ever more sophisticated bullets, lethal concoctions of high-octane gunpowder, lead cores and steel tips. Then he tests them against the armour that lines the cars.
No penetration means it's a pass, so we know, for now, the steel is ahead of the game. It's a never-ending battle, and for a couple of close-up facts, we spoke to Nick Uden, the man the rich and famous go to for advice. Nick, the thing that most people are always interested in, fascinated by, this glass. I mean, how thick have we got here?
This is 38mm thick. This is a multi-laminate. Best quality glass comes from Italy, we find, at the moment.
Normal windscreens consist of a piece of plastic sandwiched between two pieces of glass. Bulletproof glazing is the same, just made of more layers and is of a higher quality to keep it optically correct. When windows are this thick, it's easy to see why a new set of glass for a Range Rover costs £25,000.
But how have they protected the well-known weak spots of seams and joins?
Well, we thought of that. This is the whole idea of the design. What we've got here, if you look around here, we've got what we call a splash return or overlap.
And what's that made of?
This is armoured steel.
Armoured steel lips that form a perfect seal to catch any stray rounds and stop so-called ballistic leakage.
Add in laser-cut Swedish steel all round, an anti-tamper exhaust that redirects gases if it's blocked, and a self-sealing fuel tank like the ones in helicopters, and you've got a 165 grand 4-ton fortress.
But how does the weight affect performance? Well, this red Range Rover is standard and obviously faster to 60. Surprisingly though, the silver armoured car stops first thanks to beefier brakes. However, at high speeds, physics takes over and the extra momentum is harder to slow down. When it comes to handling a slalom, the normal car feels more composed and opens up a considerable lead. The armoured version's stiffer front anti-roll bar compensates for the extra weight, but causes the inside wheel to lift dramatically before the traction control cuts in to save you.
We also checked the run-flat tyres. They're 3 times thicker than normal and let you drive for 30 miles after they've been shot. But if running away seems too defensive, join us later after the dust has settled for the 5th gear school of offensive driving.
With all the recent fuss about James Bond and his Aston Martin Vanquish, not to mention tantalising glimpses of a new baby Aston, everyone seems to have forgotten about their best-selling model ever, the DB7. Launched in 1993, its almost too pretty design has been going down a storm on both sides of the Atlantic ever since. I have to confess, though, for me, it's never quite hit the spot. It's never been quite focused enough to match the sheer driver involvement of the best from Stuttgart and Modena. Even with the arrival of the 420 horsepower V12 Vantage model in 1999, it still lacked that certain wow factor. And as far as I'm concerned, the old girl can quite happily slide into a dignified retirement. Aston Martin, however, have other ideas. Take a look at its latest and perhaps final evolution, the DB7 GT. Exterior changes have been kept to a minimum and include a lift-reducing boot lid, a pair of understated bonnet vents, plus bespoke 18-inch rims and racing-grooved Brembo brakes. But given a price tag of £105,000, will it now be good enough to tempt me away from a 911 Turbo or even my favourite 360 Modena? Well, apart from the flashy pedals and the odd GT logo here and there, little has changed on the inside, which means it remains rather lacklustre. Made even worse on this particular car by this rather dubious chocolate-coloured interior. The fact is, there's just too much Ford switchgear on show for a car of this class. Indeed, I think the only things I do like are the gear lever and these rather sexy dials. But that's not what we should be concentrating on with this GT version. What we should be looking at is the extra 15 horsepower plus a bit more torque from the tuned-up V12 engine, which isn't a lot, to be honest. Plus there's firmer damping, a shorter final drive ratio for the 6-speed gearbox, which now comes with a slicker change, plus some subtle suspension changes. And the only way to see if they actually make any difference is to subject them to the full rigours of the Needell testing process. Learned that this DB7 is still a fairly soft, wallowy car. And OK, it's got those Brembo racing brakes to help stop it, but nothing will stop that rear end breaking away when you try to get the power on the road. OK, I've got the traction control switched off, but there's no limited slip differential, so in the dry, the inside wheel was just spinning away. It's better. I mean, there are little tweaks, but I think it's a bit more of a mild publicity stunt than a serious conversion. And these wet conditions, it's almost scary. I mean, the V12 engine is glorious underneath you and every little bit of extra power helps. It's not really that much different. Stop, brake, second gear, turn, quarry, give it some power, and then, just try. I mean, it's a lot of fun when you get used to it. But I don't think it's quite the finely balanced chassis that one would like to have, the sort of thing that you get from Porsche and Ferrari. Sorry, Aston. You need to try harder to fool me. So, as far as I'm concerned, fun though it can be, it is perhaps time for the DB7 to be laid to rest. Earlier, we saw how VIPs protect themselves by armouring their cars. But, of course, that is only half the story, as you still need a highly trained driver.
Normally, defensive driving is a non-contact sport.
But in some cases, experts recommend the use of reasonable force.
Now, I've always maintained the best form of defence is attack. So, welcome to the 5th Gear School of Offensive Driving. Hey!
You know how it is. Some flipping activist in front is trying to slow your progress and get you to swerve off the road. But don't get down the Hollywood route and bash them from the side, because you just break your steering. Instead, you've got to hit them from exactly the right angle from behind. Go get him, Tiff!
A simple, well-timed tap with a bit of sideways motion will send the bad guy helter-skeltering out of the way.
You know how Tiff prefers oversteer to understeer? Well, there's a perfectly good reason. All those machine gun nests you find on the exit of fast bends can be taken care of with a deft swipe.
Any frontal impact will slow you down, so just kick the back out for a glancing blow to maintain your getaway speed.
Never mind all that tricky business of leaning out the window trying to shoot at persistent pursuers. Just hit the brakes, line yourself up, and reverse into them. One punctured radiator later, and you can carry on your merry way. Try fitting a tow bar for extra effect.
Picture the scene. Cornered by revolutionaries, most experts will tell you to use the J-turn as a means of escape. How cowardly. Use it as a means of attack. Let's have it, Tiff.
The trick here is to be brave. Reverse flicking a 4x4 isn't to be advised, as you need maximum speed in reverse, and it usually ends up on 2 wheels. It also usually means a new wing. So there you go, a few handy manoeuvres for keeping the bad guys at bay, and a fair bit cheaper than forking out for all that armour.
If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find him, maybe you can hire Needles. Let's roll.